This is the mop-up for May 31st, 2024. I'm David Feldman in New York City, where my district attorney, Alvin Bragg, elected to office back in November of 2021, told reporters yesterday.
Today, we have the most important voice of all, and that's the voice of the jurors. They have spoken. Donald J. Trump has been convicted of 34 counts of falsifying business records. Thank you.
Guilty on all counts, so said the jury in Donald Trump's Manhattan criminal trial, where he was convicted Thursday on charges of falsifying business records in order to conceal hush money payments to porn star Stormy Daniels, with whom he had unprotected sex just weeks after his wife Melania gave birth to their son. Donald Trump, as you all know, now becomes the first president in U.S. history ever to be convicted of a criminal felony. He's certainly not the first president who deserved to be convicted of a criminal felony. I can think of about 44 others who should have been convicted, but he is the first. Trump was convicted Thursday on all 34 felony counts. He could be facing some prison time, but before I get tumescent over the prospect of Donald Trump spending time behind bars, it is way more realistic for me to just realize that convictions like these only result in probation and zero prison time. But Trump supporters gathering outside the courtroom took no solace in the fact that Trump probably will not be going to prison. They wept and said they were devastated. Most of these Trump supporters hadn't felt this dejected since yesterday, and the day before yesterday, and the day before that yesterday, and the yesterday before that. House Republicans fell over themselves trying to prove their loyalty to Mein Fuhrer. Marjorie Taylor Greene called the verdict a travesty of justice. House Judiciary Chair Jim Jordan called the verdict a miscarriage of justice, and Speaker Mike Johnson said it was worse than a miscarriage of justice. It was a late-term abortion of justice. The jury took 2 days, a total of 11 hours, to render their verdict. After it was read, the jurors were polled individually just to make sure there wasn't any doubt. All it took was one juror to decide that prosecutors had failed to prove Trump's guilt beyond any shadow of a doubt. All it took was one juror for prosecutors to fail. But it was a landslide. All 12 agreed Trump is guilty as charged. It was a blue wave, you might say. Immediately after the verdict was read, Trump's attorney, Todd Blanche, approached the bench and asked the judge to dismiss the verdict, calling it baseless and pointing out that the jury's decision was predicated on the testimony of Michael Cohen, who Blanche said committed perjury. But Judge Juan Merchan denied the motion. He thanked the jurors for their service and sent everyone home. According to all reports from those in the courtroom, Trump sat stone-faced waiting for the verdict to be read. After the verdict, he appeared visibly upset. Some say he turned beet red, which, as I've pointed out before, is an impossibility with an orange spray-tanned face. When you combine beet red with orange, you get vermilion. I'm colorblind, but even I know that. When Trump gets angry, he turns vermilion. It hasn't been a good week for Donald Trump. He was booed off stage at the Libertarian Convention. Melania is reportedly working on her exit strategy, refusing to show up at any of his court appearances. He's all alone. And the night before the verdict, Trump confided that he was starting to feel like Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa, Donald, the only thing you have in common with Mother Teresa is you both disapprove of condoms. That's what we learned from the trial. Trump doesn't use condoms. And of course, Mother Teresa told everybody in India, you don't need birth control. A sentencing hearing before Judge Juan Merchan has now been scheduled for July 11th. That's just 4 days before the Republican convention in Milwaukee. He's a convicted felon. Obviously, Trump is going to appeal, but he's now a convicted felon. Of course, an appellate court can theoretically stay the conviction until he goes through the appeals process. But as of now, he's a convicted felon. Trump, according to the Washington Post, must now meet with the Department of Probation here in New York City to determine his state of mental health and answer questions about his personal life to assist Judge Juan Merchan in handing down July's sentence. The Post says following the sentencing, he would likely be assigned a probation officer who would have to grant Trump permission to leave the state of New York, to fly to Wisconsin for the convention. Now, should he somehow, God forbid, find his way back inside the Oval Office, his pardon powers only extend to federal crimes. This is not a federal conviction. He cannot pardon himself out of this. What does it say about the Republican Party that their nominee is an adjudicated rapist and now a convicted felon? What does that say? A man who this year alone was also found guilty of defrauding banks and forced to pay $500 million in fines. A man whose chief financial officer, Alan Weisselberg, is now doing a second stint at Rikers Island. A candidate who owes the Internal Revenue Service close to $200 million that we know of. A man who, as president, fired the head of the FBI, James Comey, because Comey wouldn't stop looking into the Trump campaign's collusion with Russia. This is the Republican nominee. This is who all Republicans bow down to. And what does it say about the Democratic Party that there's a slight chance this guy is actually going to win? What does it say? He's not going to win. But just the fact that some people think he's going to win, what does that say about the Democratic Party? By the way, there are no laws preventing candidates for president from running for office while in prison. In 1920, Eugene Debs received more than 1 million votes running for president as the nominee for the Socialist Party while he was sitting in prison serving a 10-year sentence for delivering that famous speech in Canton, Ohio, opposing America's involvement in World War I while soldiers are over in Europe fighting. Debs was charged with violating the Espionage Act, another thing Trump might have in common with Eugene Debs. I don't think he served the full 10 years. There is no law to prevent a president from serving while serving a prison sentence. You can serve in prison while serving as president. And let me be perfectly honest here with you. If Donald Trump wanted to win by a landslide in November, he should plead guilty to anything, including the murder of John Benet Ramsey, and just set up shop in prison. I'm telling you, I'm being honest with you, if Trump were in Leavenworth, even I would vote for him. I love my country, but even I want to see that. Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg, help us out here. Some of my listeners, including me, are unfamiliar with how this whole criminal justice system thing works. So we hear that Trump was railroaded. Did you decide he was guilty? Did the judge decide he's guilty? Because that's what the Republicans seem to be saying. How do you arrive at this thing called a guilty verdict? Like there's a jury? It's just so confusing. How does it work? What's this with a jury?
The 12 everyday jurors vowed to make a decision based on the evidence and the law, and the evidence and the law alone. Their deliberations led them to a unanimous conclusion beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant, Donald J. Trump, is guilty of 34 counts of falsifying business records in the first degree to conceal a scheme to corrupt the 2016 election. And while this defendant may be unlike any other in American history, we arrived at this trial and ultimately today at this verdict in the same manner as every other case that comes through the courtroom doors, by following the facts and the law and doing so without fear or favor.
I see. So you didn't find him guilty, and Judge Juan Merchan didn't find him guilty. It was a jury of 12 citizens who decided Trump was guilty. It wasn't you or the judge, because if you listen to Fox and all these Republicans, you convicted him, or Judge Merchan convicted him. But it was a jury of 12 citizens, and Donald Trump's lawyers, as I understand it, helped pick that jury. And all it took was one juror to say Trump wasn't guilty, and there'd be no conviction. All it took was one juror. Well, that seems fair. Judge Jeanine Pirro is a former prosecutor and judge who appears on Fox News every day as America's top Jacqueline Suzanne lookalike. Judge Pirro, explain to us why we should have faith in America's jury system.
I don't want to hear about, well, the jury decided it was definitely right. Well, the appellate court will decide that.
Oh, not too much faith in the jury system. An appellate court, she says, will decide if Trump is guilty, because we can't leave the criminal justice system in the hands of the people. We need judges like me, Jeanine Pirro, to overturn verdicts. And if Republicans get lucky, like they did in Bush v. Gore, judges will also decide the 2024 presidential election. A lot of faith in the judges, not so much in the people. By the way, Judge Jeanine Pirro's husband was pardoned by Donald Trump back in 2020 because sometimes even judges don't always get it right. Well, before the verdict came in, Donald Trump insisted he was being railroaded. Here is Donald Trump telling the press how unfairly he's being treated.
But a lot of key witnesses were not called. Look at your list. Look at the players. And you know who I'm talking about. You can take 5 or 6 of them. Why didn't they call those witnesses? They didn't call them because they would have been on our side.
So he's saying prosecutors, this is really interesting. Trump is saying prosecutors weren't calling a lot of the key witnesses who would have cleared Trump. Well, that's unfair. Prosecutors had witnesses who, if they testified under oath, would have said Trump was innocent. But the prosecutors only brought witnesses to the stand who would help convict Trump. That's so unfair. And they released a list of witnesses who they were thinking of bringing to the stand. but they didn't bring them, obviously because they would have exonerated Trump. But Alvin Bragg, the Manhattan District Attorney, he didn't call them to the stand. And that's unfair that they didn't get to testify and prove Trump's innocence. And there's nothing Trump or his lawyer could do about that. His attorneys, defense attorneys, can't bring to the stand any of those witnesses who would have cleared Donald Trump of all wrongdoing because I guess, I mean, he's a former president of the United States. I think that's how criminal trials work. Only the prosecutor can bring witnesses to the stand who will say bad things about the accused, but the accused apparently can't bring any witnesses to the stand who will challenge the prosecution's witnesses. He was treated so unfairly. Well, actually, I looked into this. And by looking into this, I mean I watched an old episode of Boston Legal. It turns out, in a criminal trial, the prosecutor gets to bring his witnesses to the stand, and then, contrary to what Donald Trump just said, defense attorneys not only get to cross-examine the witnesses for the prosecution, but the defense can also bring to the stand any witnesses they want. Any witnesses the defense believes will give testimony that contradicts the prosecutor's witnesses. Apparently, even though he was a president of the United States, Trump didn't know that he could bring witnesses to the stand. And apparently his highly paid defense attorney, Todd Blanche, also didn't know that he could bring his own witnesses to the stand. Here is Todd Blanche on CNN last night, right after the verdict, and he's kind of caught flat-footed, completely unaware that defense attorneys are allowed in a court of law to bring any witnesses to the stand they want. Here he is being asked.
One thing he brought up were the witnesses who were not called. And he was saying that there could have been witnesses that would have helped make the case. We never saw Keith Schiller, Alan Weisselberg, some key figures here who got brought up a lot. Why didn't the defense call any of these witnesses?
Ooh, that's it. So that's a great question because the trial has been so unfair. There was exculpatory testimony, according to Trump, that could have come from Keith Schiller or Alan Weisselberg. Prosecutors, they said, so unfair, prosecutors didn't bring them to the stand. She's asking, why didn't you bring them to the stand? So Trump and his attorneys say that if prosecutors called Keith Schiller and Alan Weisselberg to the stand, they would have cleared Trump's name. And Todd Blanche didn't know that, as a high-priced defense attorney, that he could have called Keith Schiller and Alan Weisselberg to the stand. Okay, so what's the truth here? Keith Schiller was Donald Trump's bodyguard. Trump insists he never had sex with Stormy Daniels, but Stormy Daniels testified under oath that when she met Donald Trump in Lake Tahoe back in 2006, it was Keith Schiller, his bodyguard, who went up to her, got her phone number for Trump. Stormy Daniels says it was Trump's bodyguard, Keith Schiller, who invited her up to Trump's hotel room for dinner. And when she arrived, she said it was Keith Schiller who opened the door and let her in and then stood outside while they had sex. A junior bookkeeper at the Trump Organization testified under oath that it was Trump's bodyguard, Keith Schiller, who was in charge of accepting reimbursement checks to Michael Cohen, handing them to Donald Trump when he was in the Oval Office to sign the reimbursement checks. You know, the hush money to Stormy Daniels came out of Michael Cohen's checking account. So after the election, Trump started reimbursing him. And the Trump Organization sent the checks to the White House. Keith Schiller, the bodyguard, according to the Trump Organization's bookkeeper. Keith Schiller would get those checks, bring them into the Oval Office, have Donald Trump commit fraud by signing them, and then Keith Schiller, the bodyguard, would make sure the check signed by Donald Trump was sent back to New York, so Alan Weisselberg, his chief financial officer, could then give that check to Michael Cohen. Okay? If only the prosecutors had called Keith Schiller to testify, according to Donald Trump, we would have learned that Stormy Daniels and Michael Cohen were lying. And so was the bookkeeper for the Trump Organization. If only Todd Blanche, this highly paid defense attorney, knew that he himself could have called Keith Schiller to the stand to put Trump's bodyguard, Keith Schiller, under oath. He would swear that these two women, Stormy Daniels and the bookkeeper, were liars, and so is Michael Cohen. But Todd Blanche didn't know defense attorneys can call witnesses. He thought only the prosecutor can, because unlike me, Todd Blanche never watched Boston Legal. This is Alan Weisselberg. He served as the chief financial officer of the Trump Organization, going all the way back to when the Nazi Fred Trump was in charge. I'm sorry, he wasn't a Nazi. He was a member of the KKK. I apologize. Now, Michael Cohen testified for the prosecution that Alan Weisselberg arranged for the hush money payments, was in on a lot of the meetings setting up the hush money payments to Stormy Daniels. And Trump and his attorney, they're complaining that prosecutors never called Weisselberg to the stand to clear Donald Trump's name, because that's the job of prosecutors, to call witnesses to the stand who will undermine their case. That's how it works. What, in reality, were the prosecutors afraid of? Well, Weisselberg is a liar, an adjudicated liar, a convicted liar. In fact, he's serving time right now over at Rikers Island after he pled guilty to perjuring himself during testimony before New York State Attorney General Letitia James's civil trial against the Trump Organization back in 2020. So he perjured himself in a civil lawsuit, not the one where Trump was ordered to pay $500 million in fines, the other civil suit against the Trump Organization, not the one that Letitia James won, where Trump is banned from ever holding a charity event, and where he had to repay a couple $100,000 to assorted charities. Not that civil fraud trial he lost. There was another civil fraud trial that Trump and Weisselberg lost. It was the Trump Organization's civil fraud trial filed by Letitia James for tax fraud. And Alan Weisselberg, the chief financial officer for Trump Organization, served in Rikers Island last year after being convicted of tax fraud with the Trump Organization. So prosecutors didn't call Weisselberg because they felt he would make an unreliable witness. But Trump and his attorney insist Weisselberg, who was with Trump for 50 years, would have cleared Trump's name. If only Todd Blanche, this high-priced defense attorney, knew that defense attorneys could also call witnesses. So, like Keith Schiller, Trump's bodyguard, Alan Weisselberg, Trump's chief financial officer, they never got called to the stand to clear Trump's name. Well then, here is Todd Blanche on CNN last night giving the answer as to, you could have called Schiller and Weisselberg to the stand. Why didn't you?
Well, because we happen to live in America.
Oh, okay. We happen to live in America, he said smugly. Continue, counselor.
And we don't have the burden of proof.
And we don't have the burden of proof. So that's why you didn't call the witnesses with exculpatory testimony. Interesting. You don't have the burden of proof. That's right. The prosecutors have to prove beyond any shadow of a doubt that Donald Trump forged business documents in order to violate campaign finance law by paying hush money to Stormy Daniels in the lead up to the 2016 presidential election. He paid that hush money so voters wouldn't discover he had unprotected sex with the porn star just weeks after Melania gave birth to their son. Okay. And the two people who could disprove that the sex took place and that hush money was paid, those two people were Keith Schiller and Alan Weisselberg. Stormy Daniels and Michael Cohen testified that all of this happened, and you claim Schiller and Weisselberg could prove they were lying, and yet you didn't call them to the witness stand because you don't have the burden of proof. What you do have, Todd Blanche, is the burden of proving there isn't enough evidence to convict your client. You should return the money he's not going to pay you. Continue, counselor.
And so there's not, that's not the point. That's a question that is a loaded question that should not be asked of a defense attorney or a defendant. The question that we asked the jury, and they ultimately obviously got passed, is why the prosecution didn't call those witnesses, right? You, as a defense attorney, you don't go into a case saying, I'm going to fill the holes of the prosecution, right? And Keith Schiller and some of the other witnesses that were not ultimately called, in our view, should have been called by the prosecution. And we asked the jury to take a hard look at that. I don't know whether they did or not, but they convicted.
They convicted him. But they... Talking, bullshit, and they convicted him. They convicted your client because you decided it wasn't your job to fill the holes left by the prosecutor. That's why you lost. You can just say things in America. You can just, as long as you just keep talking, people go, I guess that makes sense. Another lie that Trump and his surrogates repeat is that Trump wasn't allowed to testify. If you remember, Trump kept promising that he was going to take the stand to clear his name. But then as the end of the trial approached and Trump never took the stand, the press began asking, why aren't you testifying? You swore you were going to testify in this one, but you're not testifying the same way you didn't testify in the E. Jean Carroll trial. And for the most part, you didn't testify in that $500 million civil fraud trial you just lost. And yet you say only cowards take the fifth. Only cowards refuse to testify on their own behalf. So why aren't you testifying? And with a straight face, Trump said, I want to testify, but Judge Juan Merchan's gag order prevents me from testifying on my own behalf. Yes, that's how stacked this trial was against poor Donald Trump. Trump said, I really want to testify, and the judge said, oh, no, you don't. Not in my courtroom. Trump is a bad liar. I mean, he's bad at it. On the last show, I reminded everyone that the Washington Post kept track of all the lies Trump told as president. The Washington Post counted 30,573 lies that Donald Trump told during the 4 years he was president. You told 30,573 lies. You would think Trump would be a much better liar, considering how much practice he's gotten. I want to testify, but the judge's gag order prevents it. I mean, that's amateur hour. Alan Weisselberg, my chief financial officer, and Keith Schiller, my bodyguard, could prove that Stormy Daniels and Michael Cohen, the witnesses for the prosecution, were lying, but the prosecutors screwed me over by not bringing them to the stand. And his idiot followers nod their head in agreement. Yeah, you were railroaded. Yeah. And then when his idiot attorney is asked, why didn't you bring Weisselberg and Schiller to the stand, Todd Blanche, with a smug look on his face, says, I'm not going to do the prosecutor's job for him. No, that was your job, you imbecile. You're supposed to call the witnesses. And that's why you lost. You lost because Trump was guilty, and you know that if Trump testified, he'd perjure himself. You lost because Weisselberg and Schiller either would have told the truth or been convicted of perjury. You lost because your client is guilty. So now that you've lost, Todd Blanche, how does it feel to go down in history as a soulless whore who stood by one of history's most notorious con artists?
It was an honor for me to spend the last 6 weeks with him, defending him.
It was an honor smelling his Big Mac farts every day. It was an honor pretending I didn't notice he crapped his pants. It was the highlight of my career to spend 8 hours a day sitting next to an orange-coated blob of methane. Yes, go on, Todd Blanche.
He's also a husband, a father, a grandfather, and a friend to a lot of people. And so when you see that happen to him, and I was standing right next to him today, and it's heartbreaking because they're laughing at a man, at a father, at a husband, at a grandfather.
We were laughing at a man, a husband, a father, and a grandfather who had unprotected sex with a porn star just weeks after his wife gave birth to their son, who carried on a year-long affair with a Playboy playmate by the name of Karen McDougal throughout the entire time Melania was pregnant with their son. We're laughing because the guy who had unprotected sex with a porn star ended up picking the 3 justices who overturned Roe. The guy who hates contraception is responsible for Roe v. Wade getting overturned. We're laughing because evangelicals believe this guy, Donald Trump, is the better Christian than Joe Biden. We're laughing because the leader of the Republican Party is an adjudicated rapist and now a convicted felon. We're laughing because Donald Trump added $8 trillion to our national debt by giving tax cuts to the richest 1% and lost more jobs than any president since Herbert Hoover during the Great Depression. And yet all the polls show Americans think he's stronger on the economy than Joe Biden is. It's funny. We're laughing at your client because he is a joke. Donald Trump is literally a joke, and the joke is on us. So you lost, Todd Blanche. Tell us why.
I mean, we've been saying for over a year that we couldn't get a fair trial in Manhattan.
You couldn't get a fair trial. You know, I keep hearing this, that Donald Trump can't get a fair trial in Manhattan. And if you repeat this lie over and over again, eventually some people who don't understand statistics believe it. Donald Trump can't get a fair trial. He can't get a fair trial anywhere. Can't get one in Georgia or Washington, D.C. or Miami. Donald Trump, whenever he's on trial, can't get a fair jury. It's impossible. Okay, let's do some math. Get out your calculators. Donald Trump and Todd Blanche insist he can't get a fair trial in Manhattan because, you know, the Hollywood liberals all live here. Donald Trump says everybody hates him here. Well, because to know Trump is to hate him. Everybody does hate him here, but not everyone. Not everyone hates Donald Trump. In 2020, here in New York City, where Trump was just convicted because he can't get a fair trial, Joe Biden won 2,321,759 votes right here in New York City. Trump won 691,682 votes. In New York City, where everybody hates Donald Trump, 691,682 people voted for him in 2020. This is why Todd Blanche sucks as both a lawyer and a prevaricator. Get out your calculators and do the math, okay? Roughly 1/4 of the voters here in New York City, where Trump was just convicted, roughly 1/4 of the voters here in New York City voted for Donald Trump. Now, if you vote in an election, you're going to get called for jury duty. That means roughly 25% of the jury pool in New York City voted for Donald Trump. Donald Trump and his idiot attorney, Todd Blanche, insist he can't get a fair trial in Manhattan because we hate him. And we do. But only 75% of us hate him. Now, remember, in a criminal trial, when you pick a jury, you only need to find one, not a majority, only one who doesn't want to convict. You get one juror who doesn't want to convict, and Trump is found innocent. Okay? And you also have to remember that Donald Trump has millions at his disposal from that super PAC to spend on the best jury specialists money can buy. There are people whose only job is to come in and assist someone like Donald Trump and Todd Blanche in picking a jury. There are specialists who are experts in, voir dire? And all you need to find is one juror, one rogue juror. And yesterday, or 2 days ago, word was there was a rogue juror. Okay? This is Rudy Giuliani looking in the mirror. Believe it or not, he has a son. Somebody actually had consensual sex once with Rudy Giuliani. His son's name is Andrew Giuliani, and he's covering the Trump trial for One American News Network. And here is Andrew Giuliani giving us the inside dope before the verdict about this rogue juror. They found a rogue juror. Remember, you just need one.
In terms of the rogue juror theory, I do have another piece of information that happened today at one point.
Okay, go on, son of Rudy.
While they were reading back the testimony of Michael Cohen, what Cohen testified happened at the Trump Tower meeting in August of 2015. That same juror who just the other day, while Steinglass was giving his hours-long summation, put his head in his hands. And I think that's the same juror that the Trump team is looking at.
So there's a rogue juror who's covering his face. Okay, go on.
He ended up looking at President Trump, was the only one who was looking at President Trump. It was not with a scowl on his face during that testimony. And there's a little nugget that we have from inside the courtroom.
Thank you. A little nugget from Andrew Giuliani, Rudy's little nugget. 12 jurors. Okay? All it takes is one to vote not guilty. And Todd Blanche spent millions hiring jury specialists to find that one juror. Now, get out your calculators and let's do a statistical breakdown. If 75% of the jury pool voted for Biden and 25% voted for Trump, the odds of Trump winning a majority of jurors, that would be, 7-5? Right? 12, 7's the majority, right? 7-5. The odds of Trump winning a 7-5 majority are stacked against him. There's no way he could win. There's no question that based on how people vote in New York City, the odds are stacked against Donald Trump if he needs to win 7 out of 12 jurors for an acquittal. But he only needs one. He only needs 1 out of 12 jurors to vote in his favor. And we know that jury consisted of Trump voters because Todd Blanche, his attorney, helped pick the jury. That's the way it works. Prosecutors and the defense attorneys, they pick the jury together. So there's going to be a couple of Trump voters in that jury box. And all Trump and Todd Blanche needed, 1. Not 7. They didn't need a simple majority. They just needed 1 juror to say there isn't enough evidence to convict. Donald Trump needed 1/12 of the vote. He got 1/4 of the vote in 2020 here in New York City, but to get an acquittal, he needed 1/12 of the vote. His odds of getting a fair trial are greater here in New York City than a lot of counties spread throughout the country. This is one of the largest pro-Trump jury pools in America, believe it or not. And all he needed was 1/12 of the vote. And he couldn't get it because his lawyer, Todd Blanche, sucks and Trump is guilty. That's why. His lawyer sucks. And somewhere up in heaven, O.J. Simpson is looking down at all this and saying, dude, you got to hire better lawyers. And then O.J. is being asked, what are you doing in heaven? And O.J. saying, oh, man, I just broke into heaven to retrieve some of my sports memorabilia and collectibles and maybe hunt down the real killer. And then he's thrown out of heaven. I think they have a jail in heaven. Here is Donald Trump immediately after the verdict was handed down. And let's see, what do you want to bet? What's the word? I'm going to say he says the trial was rigged.
This was a disgrace.
Oh, okay, I was wrong. I figured you'd start with the trial was rigged, but you went with disgrace. What else?
This was a rigged trial by a conflicted judge who was corrupt.
Okay, there you go. A rigged trial by a conflicted judge who was corrupt. Is that slander or libel? Go on.
It's a rigged trial, a disgrace.
Okay, it's a rigged trial and a disgrace. Any other adjectives?
This was a rigged, disgraceful trial.
Okay, a little variation on a theme here. Continue.
Our whole country is being rigged right now.
Our whole country is being rigged right now.
And I think it's just a disgrace.
Okay, a disgrace, you say 10,000 times.
But this was a rigged decision right from day one.
It was a rigged decision right from day one. Okay.
It's a rigged trial, a disgrace.
It's a rigged trial and a disgrace. It was a rigged, disgraceful trial. It was rig-graceful. That's what this trial was. It was rig-graceful. The whole country is being rigged right now, according to Donald Trump. The elections are rigged. I played you the clip last week where he says the economy under Joe Biden is rigged. All the numbers that say the economy is on fire, he says those numbers are rigged. The courts are rigged. You know who Donald Trump is? He's the kid in Little League whose father bullies the coach into letting him play shortstop. And every time the ball goes through his legs, he blames his mitt. I grew up with spoiled rich kids like this, and it was never their fault. It's the mitt. Well, after the verdict, auditions for Donald Trump's running mate resumed. Here is Ohio Senator, Republican J.D. Vance, auditioning, showing his loyalty to mein Führer.
We have to be willing to fight back. We need to be subpoenaing Judge Merchan and his daughter. We need to understand what are the connections between big Democratic money and this sham prosecution. Did George Soros ever talk to Alvin Bragg about using his power to go after Donald Trump? We need to get to the bottom of it. And when we find wrongdoing, we need to be willing to actually punish it.
When we find wrongdoing, we need to be willing to actually punish it unless any of that wrongdoing was committed by mein Führer. Then J.D. Vance warned that we're living in a banana republic. It's a slippery slope, and that in a banana republic, they won't stop with just Trump.
It's not going to stop with Donald Trump. Banana republics never stop with the guy at the top.
I'm sorry, could you let that Freudian slip out again, please?
Banana Republicans.
Thank you, banana Republicans. Interesting. Next up. Hi, I'm Marco Rubio. I'm a senator from Florida, and I'm auditioning for the role of Trump's running mate. Oh, hi, Marco. Go ahead.
This is the most outrageous travesty I've ever seen, and the problem here is Democrats have crossed this line. They have crossed the line in which now the court system is a political weapon, and it's going to be very hard for it not to come back the other way.
It's going to be hard for you guys not to politicize the courts. Continue. Interesting.
But I think we need to understand that they've crossed the line now and let a genie out of a bottle. It's going to be hard to put back in place.
Well, the genie is out of the bottle, and now you guys are going to start prosecuting. Yeah, because you've never done that before with Ken Starr, and you haven't spent 8 years trying to impeach Joe Biden, even though he's been in office for under 4 years. But yes, the genie's out of the bottle. Okay. J.D. Vance, is there a description for someone like Marco Rubio?
Banana Republicans.
Yes, he is a banana Republican. Well, Larry Hogan is a principled Republican. There are still some left. He used to be governor of Maryland, and now he's running for Senate. And a lot of people think he might be instrumental in turning the Senate red. And after the verdict, Larry Hogan, a principled Republican, appealed for calm. He wrote, Regardless of the result, I urge all Americans to respect the verdict and the legal process. At this dangerously divided moment in our history, all leaders, regardless of party, must not pour fuel on the fire with more toxic partisanship. We must reaffirm what has made this nation. And Chris LaCivita, a Trump loyalist, just installed as the new chief operating officer of the Republican Party, responded to Larry Hogan's tweet, quote, "You just ended your campaign." The head of the Republican Party called Larry Hogan a dead man walking because he urged people from both sides of the aisle, don't pour fuel on the fire with more toxic partisanship. The head of the Republican Party, Chris LaCivita, saying, no, more fuel on the fire. You just ended your campaign. One of the heads, the chief operating officer of the Republican Party, his job is to win back the Senate. Instead, he just told Senate candidate Republican Larry Hogan publicly, you showed no loyalty to Trump. Instead, you urged calm. You urged people not to stoke the fires. Well, you just ended your campaign. We'd rather lose to a Democrat than have a disloyal turncoat like you in our party. It's incredible. It's all about loyalty to Donald Trump. How would you describe Chris LaCivita, J.D. Vance?
Banana Republicans.
Yes, a banana Republican. Well, this handsome devil is Sean Davis. He founded The Federalist. It's a right-wing website that had to remove its comments section after advertisers complained about the racism. This was his tweet following the Trump verdict. In 2024, I want to see lists of which Democrat officials are going to be put in prison. This is what happens when you cross the Rubicon. He wants names of Democrats to put in prison. J.D. Vance, how would you describe Sean Davis?
Banana Republicans.
Yes, a banana Republican. Caroline Leavitt worked in the Trump White House, ran for Congress. She lost. She's from New Hampshire. She's now the Trump campaign press secretary. And here she is on Fox News right after the verdict.
Success is the best revenge, but let's say he does win re-election this November. Will there be any revenge directed at the people that put this hoax case together?
The hoax case. Will there be revenge? Trump press secretary Caroline Leavitt.
Well, certainly people need to be held accountable for the crimes that have been committed over the last several years that we've seen them lie. We've seen them abuse our justice system. We've seen Joe Biden target innocent Americans across this country, such as the protesters on January 6th, who they've thrown in the gulag in Washington, D.C. President Trump said he will pardon those protesters on day one of his presidency.
Trump is going to pardon the protesters who stormed the Capitol on January 6th and tried to kill his vice president and the Speaker of the House. They're protesters. How would you describe her, J.D. Vance?
Banana Republicans.
Yeah, that's a banana Republican. Then Trump's press spokesperson went after Joe Biden. Apparently, she was appalled that Joe Biden sent out an email blast right after Donald Trump's conviction, politicizing the trial.
Joe Biden shamefully is fundraising off of the political persecution of his opponent.
I see. And what should we do about this?
So go to DonaldJTrump.com, support President Trump.
So we can fundraise off the political persecution of Donald Trump. By the way, Trump's website crashed yesterday, supposedly because so many of his followers were sending the alleged billionaire their money. That's what we were told, that the website where they raised money couldn't handle all the traffic. Either that or they hired somebody from Truth Social. I suspect he hired somebody I suspect Devin Nunes from Truth Social took over the website, and that's why it's crashed. Please continue.
Stand on the side of democracy, of law and order.
Yes. Stand on the side of democracy and law and order. If Donald Trump is the embodiment of two things, it's democracy and law and order. Yes. After a long day at Fox News, wait, do we have more from you?
Stand on the side of democracy, of law and order.
Okay, thank you. After a long day working at Fox News, the great Jesse Waters, watching Trump get convicted, he took a moment for some deep reflection about Donald Trump.
This man's life is a Greek tragedy.
This man's life is a Greek tragedy. Yes. Oedipus Rex by Sophocles, but instead of his mother, he ends up sleeping with his daughter. That's the Greek tragedy. Go on, Jesse Waters, you classical scholar, you.
From billionaire bankruptcy.
Yes, from billionaire to bankruptcy. That's what a Greek tragedy is. As Euripides said, those whom the gods would destroy, they first raise up. Yeah, go ahead. You got it right.
TV star, Hollywood Walk of Fame.
Huh? TV star to Hollywood Walk of... That's more of a lateral move. That's not really an Aristotelian tragedy. But continue.
Divorces, marriages, children.
Divorces. Okay, let me just get the Aristotelian trajectory here of tragedy. Divorces, that would be bad. Marriages would be good. And then children has to be bad. Okay, that makes sense. Don Jr., Eric, Ivanka. Yes, that is pretty tragic. If you would like a transcript of this nonsense, go to shopdavidfeldman.com. Thanks to the morons who listen to my show and buy useless crap like this is a new coffee mug, the Trump Scream mug. Can you see this? All right. Or we're giving away free Harvard diplomas. It's spelled Harverd. You can get a free Harvard diploma over at shopdavidfeldman.com. And while you're over there, pick up a Harvard mug. I'm telling you, just bring this to the office. Get your Harvard mug. You can get a free Harvard diploma over David Feldman, over at shopdavidfeldman.com. And for a few extra bucks, you can pick up a Harvard coffee mug. Look at that. I mean, it's spelled wrong, but people will think you went to Harvard. You get a raise and a free diploma at Shop David Feldman, or just download the transcripts for free. And my idiot nephew, my sister's son, Leonard, I gave him my credit card. He printed up David Ferdman Show coffee mugs. So we're trying to unload because Leonard didn't bother to check the spelling. So we're trying to unload David Ferdman Show coffee mugs over at Shop David Feldman. And of course, this is now a big seller, the official Trump fart filtration mask. That's over at shopdavidfeldman.com. Father's Day gifts. Who doesn't want a world's creepiest stepdad coffee mug made in Los Estados Unidos? Coffee mug. Just go to Shop David Ferdman. Leonard, it's Feldman. Look at this. We printed up David Ferdman Show hoodies, David Ferdman Show coffee mugs, David Ferdman Show. Anyway, are you familiar with an Appeal to Heaven flag? This is Dutch Sheets carries this flag. It's what the insurrectionists carried through the Capitol on January 6th. And it's the flag that Justice Alito flies over his vacation home. It's basically a call for America to become a white Christian ethno-nationalist state. And it's a big seller. It's an Appeal to Heaven flag. Justice Alito flies it over his home. They carried it into the Capitol. I'm selling an Appeal to D's Nuts flag. This is real. You can go to shopdavidfeldman.com. An Appeal to D's Nuts flag. Look how beautiful that. I mean, it comes with a pole, but you can also just hang it on the wall. It's absolutely beautiful. Well, some thoughts about Alvin Bragg before I wrap it up. I do have to hand it to Alvin Bragg, my district attorney. Of all 4 criminal trials, this was considered the runt of the litter, the one least likely to result in a conviction. The trial down in Miami, where Trump is charged with mishandling classified documents, that's a slam dunk. Everyone knows he's guilty, which is why it's been delayed indefinitely. The trial in Washington, D.C., where Trump is charged with election interference, also a slam dunk, which is why the Supreme Court still can't issue a ruling on presidential immunity. They just can't seem to make up their minds as to whether a president can order SEAL Team 6 to kill his political opponent. The RICO trial down in Georgia has been delayed indefinitely, so an appeals court can decide if the DA, Fani Willis, should be disqualified after it was discovered she may have had a romantic relationship with her lead prosecutor. So that trial has to stop so an appeals court can decide whether or not it's appropriate for an adjudicated rapist like Donald Trump to have to be cross-examined by a district attorney who had a romantic relationship with her lead prosecutor. So that trial is delayed indefinitely. It's been a success. Defendants are flipping. Because that's a slam dunk, Trump pumped millions into the RICO trial down in Fulton County to get that delayed. But somehow, the Manhattan criminal trial didn't get delayed. Trump kind of tried to delay it, but he didn't try hard enough. And I think his political calculus was, let's have this trial take place before the election. I think Trump figured, here I'm going to get acquitted. And when I get acquitted here, it will serve as proof that those other 3 criminal trials are political persecution. I think Trump wanted this trial. And rightfully so. I mean, if you had to choose which one of the 4 to have take place before the election, you pick this one because it was arbitrary. Falsifying business records to cover up payments to a porn star, yeah, I'm sure, yes, it's illegal. but it's kind of like Bill Clinton lying under oath about Monica Lewinsky. Technically, that's illegal, but it's prosecutorial discretion. Ken Starr set Clinton up with that question because he wanted to prosecute Clinton. And the Manhattan District Attorney, Alvin Bragg, clearly wanted to prosecute Trump. His predecessor, Cyrus Vance, didn't. And when Alvin Bragg first took office, he was elected in 2021. So in the first part of 2022, it looked and sounded like Alvin Bragg wasn't going to prosecute. I don't know if you remember this. He looked at the case that the prosecutors had built against Trump, and he said, you know what? I don't think this is strong enough. He was newly elected, and his feeling was at the time in early 2022, it's not good enough just to indict Donald Trump. I have to win. If we indict and then lose, we will end up hurting all the other criminal investigations against Donald Trump. If we lose this, he can make the case these are just partisan witch hunts. So I'm very proud that I have a district attorney who won the conviction yesterday, Alvin Bragg. He's my DA. Courageous and smart. He wasn't going to try this until he knew he could win it. But still, there was no guarantee he was going to win. Like I keep saying, all it took was the mafia to get one juror. So good on DA Alvin Bragg. I know that most Americans didn't follow this trial. I thought they would. It involved sex with a porn star, sex with a Playboy playmate, but it got too deep into the woods about falsifying business records and what constitutes violations of campaign finance law. And you could mistake what he was charged with as a misdemeanor. You could argue, is it really a violation of campaign finance law, getting Michael Cohen to pay hush money to Stormy Daniels, bill it as a legal expense, and then get reimbursed by Trump months later? Well, a jury thinks it's against the law, but it took a lot of courage to bring this to trial because there are many gray areas when it comes to campaign finance law and falsifying records and the old, hey, we all do it defense. It's very arbitrary. After the verdict was rendered, Donald Trump found himself in his comfort zone. I try to figure out what this sociopath thinks and feels. This is his comfort zone. Since the time Fred Trump sent this sociopath off to military school, Donald has been in a permanent state of fight or flight. Most men, he's 77, most men his age want to spend time with their grandchildren, read. He plays golf, but what really gets Trump's blood going, what makes him feel alive, is feeling like he's falling. My friend Rick Overton, great comedian, described people like this. He said, did you ever go to sit down and realize the chair isn't there? And that moment of panic that you're just about to fall? He said that space between realizing there's no chair to catch you and falling on your ass. That is a comfort zone for some people. Rick Overton, the great comedian and actor, told me this. I've never forgotten that. There are people who live for that moment where there's no chair to catch them. Kind of like Don Draper in Mad Men. Don Draper, like Trump, isn't satisfied until everything around him is crumbling. For some reason with these people, it gives their life purpose and meaning. Partly to figure out a way to extirpate themselves from this situation, but because of childhood trauma and their chemistry, I know too many people like this. They live for that sense of falling and being in danger and making things around them crumble. Not just their own lives, but everyone around them. You know, we call Donald Trump a merchant of chaos, but the truth is, Trump is a consumer of chaos. Chaos is his life force. His entire adulthood has been spent with lawsuits hanging over his head, back taxes. He's never been good with the IRS, creditors, bankruptcies, small claims court, 4,000 lawsuits, ex-wives, ex-employees, all coming after him. In a previous life, Donald Trump could just as easily have been Houdini hanging upside down above Times Square in a straitjacket. I think he would be very happy. He needs to be in a straitjacket, but I think he would have been very happy being Harry Houdini. One part of me admires Trump's determination, his ability to keep going no matter what. But then I realize I am mistaking sociopathy for perseverance. Ted Bundy also had grit and determination. That's part of the pathology. I will say this, though, Trump, someone like Trump, once, I don't even think a generation, I think he is 100-year, it takes 100 years to find somebody like this guy. And I foolishly try to figure out what he's feeling right now. I think this conviction is like an ice cream sundae to him. I think this reminds him of the childhood where Fred told him, "You're no good, you'll never amount to anything." I think this is a very comfortable place for Donald Trump. But we also saw yesterday is something new for Trump. His very first criminal trial. What we see during his post-presidency, that when you put Trump before a jury in a civil or criminal trial, he loses. Despite the nearly 4,000 lawsuits Trump has been a party to, he hasn't figured out how to win any of them. He's figured out how to delay, but when it goes before a jury, he loses. The bravado, the threats, the countless violations of gag orders, at the time they seem menacing. And that works with a certain segment of the population. When it comes to the court of public opinion, some people like that. But when you get Donald Trump inside an actual courtroom, all of that behavior works against him. As broken as America is, a majority of us still know right from wrong. A majority of us know this is a bad guy. And Trump didn't need to testify in the E. Jean Carroll defamation lawsuit. He didn't. His behavior in the courtroom told jurors all they needed to know. Supposedly, the jurors in the Manhattan criminal trial didn't watch the news. They were supposedly in a bubble, unaware of what Trump was saying to the press right outside the courtroom doors. I don't think they knew too much about the gag orders, but they did see how he behaved during Stormy Daniels' testimony, his grunts, his sighs, his throwing his arms up in disgust. The jurors heard Judge Juan Merchan angrily admonish Trump. They saw the judge angrily admonish Trump's one witness, or I think he had two witnesses. There was one witness empowered by all the gangsters who showed up to lend moral support. This one witness began stink-eyeing the judge, and the judge emptied out the courtroom. The jury saw that. Had Trump taken the stand, which he didn't, he would have perjured himself. But by sitting there in the courtroom, unable to control himself, he spoke the truth. The jury heard enough from Donald Trump to decide this is exactly how a criminal behaves. He didn't need to testify. He just couldn't sit still. He couldn't keep his mouth shut. The same way he couldn't keep his mouth shut during the E. Jean Carroll trial. And like everything he's ever done, he self-sabotaged. If he could learn to keep his mouth shut and behave, maybe the E. Jean Carroll verdict would have been a couple of million instead of, 93 million? Maybe Judge Arthur Engoron wouldn't have hit him with a $500 million fine if he had just shown a little respect. He is a loser. And he's going to lose in November because a majority of Americans still know right from wrong. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. Thank you for listening to me. If you would like a transcript of today's episode, they're free. Go to shopdavidfeldman.com. If you want to do me a favor, you will share this episode with friends. If you want to keep seeing this future episodes, subscribe to my channel and hit the like button. The like button signals that you want to see more of this. I think that covers everything. Thank you to everybody in the chat room, people who, to Bob, who keeps the chat room civil. I will see everybody late Saturday night. Thank you.